What is good, ladies and gentlemen? This is your boy Riddell, and we are back at it today. And I'm not doing a reaction, but I am doing some commentary in terms of a recent video that I watched. I will note that I will not be doing a full reaction of debate panel number 4. I just don't have time to react to a 2-hour video of that. But I've seen some clips here and there. I don't really have opinions regarding that, so I'm sure it'll be interesting to see number 5 if that comes out. With that said, I'm reacting to the interview of Vivek going on the Young Turks, which is a more leftist program, YouTube channel, podcast, whatever you want to call it. And I respect Vivek for going on this platform because this allows him to interact with a difference of opinion. This allows him to potentially have the people on the left to understand who he is. Although I don't like a lot of the things that Vivek says, I do think he lies and he's a little hypocritical for certain rhetoric that he spews. I respect the fact that he would go on the Young Turks. And I would appreciate if more candidates would go on the opposite platform and have conversations. I know DeSantis had a recent debate with Newsom, I believe. I couldn't find that anywhere, honestly. I tried to find a full debate of the two, and I couldn't. I legit couldn't. I was looking on YouTube, the internet. I could not find a full debate. I only could find highlights or commentary, and I don't want to hear someone else's opinion regarding the conversation. It's kind of weird. I heard Newsom destroy DeSantis in the debate. It's kind of weird I can't find the full debate. I'm just saying. And it was on Fox. Makes you question a few things. With that said, I'm going to be talking about what I found in the Vivek interview, and I'll try to be as unbiased as possible. But you Vivek fans are going to be upset with me anyway. It is what it is. I'm not trying to impress you, but I'm trying to give some analysis on what I'm seeing from the Vivek conversations, obviously from my point of view, of course. With that said, if you want to come on my platform to talk about Vivek in full, feel free to come on. I fully invite you. Now, a big thing from what I've seen in this conversation with the Young Turks is one criticism I have for the Young Turks is focusing too much on Donald Trump. They did it continuously, asking about questions regarding Donald Trump instead of focusing on policies that Vivek was in favor for. I think they should have done that. I think they should have just tore that apart. But instead, they kept on attacking his inconsistencies. And there was inconsistencies, but there was too much focus on Trump. I think you should have had one Trump question and then moved on to some of the Vivek's policies. Now, they did do that eventually, but it is a big criticism I have for the Young Turks regarding this situation. They did have a fair point that Trump is the leading candidate regarding the Republican primary. So it makes sense for Vivek to say certain things about Trump to help his candidacy. Vivek didn't want to say a lot, and this is what I'm talking about. Now, first things first, they had an interesting quote regarding Trump and Vivek. Trump actually said this about Vivek. The thing I like about Vivek is that he only has good things to say about President Trump. Quote from Trump from his social media website. And this perfectly embodies the relationship between Trump and Vivek. Trump is big brother, Vivek is little brother, and Vivek won't say anything bad against big brother, even though he's running against Trump. When they asked Vivek what was the thing that he had over Trump and if he's a better candidate than Trump, Vivek did name one thing. I'm younger and I can connect to a younger audience. That is one of the things that he did say. And he says that this is his power and it'll be powerful for him in terms of the election. Kind of weird considering how he wants to kind of swerve certain policies regarding the young individuals. But with that said, I hear what you're saying, but anytime they brought up anything policy wise or anything regarding Trump and his like inconsistencies, Vivek refused to say anything negative against Trump. He refused to say I'm a better candidate than Trump. He always played very careful with his words. So he was inferring something regarding his status, was not outright saying it. And I'll be okay with it if that is your kind of vibe where I'm like, I don't really try to attack my opponent, but that's not true. You attack DeSantis, you attack Nikki Haley a lot now recently because Nikki Haley has schooled you plenty of times in the past, but you won't attack Trump. This can be due to two things, even though he's running against Trump. It could be in part to first thing, he wants Trump's voters vote, so he refuses to attack Trump. Or it could be the second thing. He worships Trump. He loves Trump. He'd rather Trump be the president than himself, which makes me question why you're running in the first place. I'll be completely honest. But that's kind of like the where we started off. One of the first questions they asked in referencing Trump is in referencing some of the allegations, the indictments against him, of course. They referenced the stuff regarding the legal documentation. Vivek noted that he didn't think Trump did anything wrong based off certain policies that he believes kind of exonerates Trump for any wrongdoing for taking legal documents from the White House. And he thinks he's fine for doing that in the purposes of his status. He also didn't really want to comment on Trump regarding the fake electors. So not only did Trump do nothing wrong regarding the legal documents, he also basically indicated that Trump did no wrong regarding fake electors. Now, the fake elector scheme, to kind of explain it to you pretty briefly, is there is a pro-Trump group essentially pretending to do all the things that the real electors are required to do at an election, as spelled out in the Constitution, but it was for show. It was a PR stunt. CNN previously reported that Trump allies hoped to gin up coverage on the right-wing ONN network. The Trump backers met at state houses or nearby and signed certificates that used similar language as the real certificates, proclaiming their votes for president and vice president. But these fake certificates serve no legal purpose. Anyone can type out whatever they want in Microsoft Word and make it look official with a signing ceremony, but that doesn't make it real. It's something that I found regarding the fake elector scheme. Vivek's response regarding the fake elector scheme is he basically thinks that Trump did not do anything illegal. The only thing that he said regarding Trump in this situation is that all he did was lie. So because it's not an illegal action based off his personal opinion, Trump did no wrong. So two of the big situations regarding Trump, he thinks he did no wrong. And then obviously we're going to see what the courts do, of course. Obviously the Young Turks think he did a lot wrong in terms of the situation. But it's very interesting that Vivek didn't really want to say anything negative to him in this situation. Now, with that said, when it comes down to the courts and whether or not they're going to find Trump guilty of illegal actions, they did ask Vivek regarding that a little bit more broadly. And basically, some of the things that Vivek said is that if he was president, he would pardon Trump for any wrongdoing. One thing that he pointed out against the Young Turks is that they're making an assertion regarding Trump's actions to be illegal and working backwards from the evidence. Now, that's a fair thing to say, to be honest, because the verdict hasn't been let out as of yet. And he makes it seem like he's waiting for the charges to be spelt out. But the fact that he's more than willing to pardon him and the fact that he doesn't call out Trump makes me think that even if he was guilty, Vivek would still not condemn Trump for anything that he has done. Based off what I've seen from Vivek and all his interactions and everything he says about Trump, of course. I will say this, though. When it comes down to this interview, I'm going to point it out again. They were way too focused on Trump and Vivek's inconsistencies. He's biased towards Trump. We know this. But I would have preferred if they would have focused more on certain very specific conversational points. Now, one of the first things that they brought up in regards to Vivek is when he announced that he would change the voting age to the age of 25. Now, when I reacted to this and talked about it in my podcast, I thought this was a ludicrous statement to make. Now, this gave him the opportunity to explain a little bit more when they asked regarding the situation, if this is what you would do and how you would go about it. Basically, he didn't answer the question. Matter of fact, he escaped from the question very much so. His response to this situation regarding 25, his first thing that he kind of pointed out is students or people should have the same level of civic understanding as immigrants that come in the country. And I don't even necessarily disagree with that statement. He pointed out the best way to go about this is better civics education, potentially a civics test, to make sure that they understand what they're talking about. And that is fine and dandy. The problem here is because he brought up an analogy, matter of fact, is that if the proper education is implemented, even a 10-year-old can understand and pass these tests. The problem is your assertion that we need to change the age to 25 for this to make sense. Why don't you just say things like better education in the civics courses for students instead of saying, how about we change the age to 25? Because he didn't address the fact that he wanted to change it to 25 and what 25 meant versus 18. He did say that he would consider some people who serve in the military and serve the state would be obviously an exception. But the thing that he focused on more so is civic understanding our government. And that's more of an education thing, not an age one. Jank also brought up something in regards to this. The fact that he wants to change the age to 25. And it's kind of weird because we've seen certain things in the past where certain ways of limiting voting and, certain poll participation, and the fact that Republicans in general at the younger age are not as participating in politics, it makes it seem like he's trying to manipulate the voting system in favor of Republicans. That is the biggest concern. And that's something that I criticize continuously, that this doesn't make sense because you're potentially manipulating the voting. Once you're 18, you're an adult. You participate in the state. You participate in the government. Unless you want to change the legal age of being an adult to a different age, as long as it's 18, as long as you can join the military, as long as you can get your own house, get your own apartment, get a full-time job, you should be allowed to participate in the government. If we want better civic understanding, that's an educational point, not an age one. So with that said, he did say some other things, though, that I did like. Election day, a national holiday. I completely agree. On election day, everybody should go out and vote. Holiday, you don't have to go to school. You don't have to work. Go out and vote. I am wholeheartedly in agreement with that, to be honest. Now, another big conversation point that Vivek kind of pointed out, this is not necessarily policy related, but this is, kind of policy related, is when they talked about the politicians, their credibility, and super PACs. Vivek said he's very much against super PACs, and he did say that some of the candidates up there are good people, but they are tainted by the system, and they're basically bought due to super PACs. Just so we're all on the same page, the definition of a super PAC is a type of independent political action committee which may raise unlimited sums of money from corporations, unions, and individuals, but is not permitted to contribute to or coordinate directly with parties or candidates. So he made it very clear that all these candidates who have super PACs are innately corrupted by the system. Funny enough, Vivek also has a super PAC. Vivek has super PACs as well. Vivek has people that are part of a committee that donate money in benefit of his campaign. A lot of money. Okay, so I don't even necessarily know why super PACs are inherently a bad thing. He did point out that when it comes down to his criticisms, he doesn't think politicians are truly independent from these super PACs because they go to these fundraisers and talk to donors. I don't necessarily think that is anything wrong with that, right? When it comes to running an election, obviously you're going to need a lot of money to reach as many people as possible. As long as these people are not telling you to do certain things for like favors or anything, or abide by certain policies, as long as they're not doing that, I don't know what is wrong with an organization supporting your cause. If they support you and what you're trying to do, who cares if they donate you money? Now, to kind of give Vivek the, not benefit of the doubt, but to kind of give him a little credence, he did say that his biggest issue regarding it is that if the super PACs donate more money than you're campaigning, and I did look up some numbers to help Vivek's kind of case regarding this, it said that Vivek has received over $3 million from super PACs or from donations or whatever, and he contributed over $15 million from his individual campaign. So he's following his own advice, because obviously if he didn't, he'd be in a big hypocrite in the situation. And he's very critic of Nikki Haley because obviously she's getting a lot of money from different super PACs and donors and all that stuff. So as long as he's following what he's preached, I respect the consistency at the bare minimum. Okay. Now, with that said, they did bring up Trump again on the Young Turks. They actually said that Trump was receiving hundreds of millions of dollars from super PACs. And those money helped fund his campaign. And when they asked Vivek, do you condemn Trump like you condemn someone like Nikki Haley? Because obviously he calls Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, DeSantis out by name. And he didn't. He said he didn't like the system. He didn't like the process, but he wouldn't call out Trump specifically. Again, another matter of inconsistency when it comes to Vivek. He refused to say anything bad about Trump. And then he says something that doesn't even make sense. He said that he wasn't running against the other candidates. He was running against the system. The problem with that is you are very much in multiple situations attacking other candidates. Not the system that they're a part of, but the candidates as individuals. Matter of fact, you had a whole spiel today when you were attacking Nikki Haley. Whether you want to attack Nikki Haley or not, I don't really care. But again, you're a little inconsistent. You're lying. You're being hypocritical. Like, what are we talking about? Speaking of the attack on Nikki Haley that he was going on about, he was attacking her and her credibility. Now, this is a very interesting strategy and a legitimate one from politics. Although I hate politics game strategies in terms of debate things, this one I think was more powerful than I expected. And I can see why the layman supporter would grasp onto these attacks so wholeheartedly, especially if they're already biased for Vivek already, right? He attacked the fact that she had certain relationships with certain organizations. He attacked the fact that she shouldn't be president considering she's monetizing while she's in governmental power. He said that she was in debt and then she made $8 million. He was bringing up her relationship with military contractors and, you know, being part of certain boards and doing certain things regarding stocks. And it does beg to question with her relationship with certain military contractors, starting her own military contract business. All words Vivek says. I didn't fact check any of this, but I'm just saying his words. It's fair that the general audience would think it's kind of weird that Vivek or Nikki Haley is so much in support of Ukraine and or in support of defending Ukraine and defending Israel because of her relationship with certain like military contracting companies, right? I could see why people would draw that connection. I'm not going to be ignorant about that, of course. I think there's more nuance behind it, but it definitely is something that I would not blame you if you criticize her for. I would criticize her for it, although I think being on Israel's side and Ukraine's side is not a bad thing inherently, but I could see why people would bring up that criticism when it comes down to Nikki Haley, especially if you're really anti-war and you're definitely more you know, what's the word when it comes to America and not going anywhere? I forgot the word for it, but especially if you want America to be a lot more sovereign to themselves and not as much of an international influence. So I can see why people would have certain opinions. So his big thing regarding Nikki Haley is that she was making money with the government position. With that said, the Young Turks brought up the fact that Donald Trump did similar things. Matter of fact, Donald Trump, just so I'm on the same page in terms of the specific things that he was doing, when Donald Trump was in president or was in power, apparently he was directing official government business to Trump properties and inflating the prices of hotel stays to government officials and members of the military in order to pad his pockets. So a perfect example of Trump using his government power and government position to make a profit. When they asked Vivek his opinion regarding that, he again refused to attack Trump as an individual for the wrongdoings, but he would be more than happy in doing it with Nikki Haley. What this makes me think is that he doesn't truly care that Nikki Haley is doing what she's doing, And I don't even necessarily think what Nikki Haley's doing is automatically bad, but I think he's doing it because Nikki Haley's above him in terms of the election, in terms of polls. She's his biggest threat as of right now, and obviously DeSantis after him. And the first three panels, from what I've seen, Nikki Haley would destroy him in most debates and call out his his resume basically. So Vivek went on the attack parade and is now calling out Nikki Haley for these things, even though he doesn't call out people like Donald Trump for the exact same thing. Matter of fact, what this kind of puts this full circle, all the hypocrisy when it comes to Trump, all the inconsistencies when it comes to Trump, Vivek says Trump is the greatest president of all time. But all these things that Vivek hates, Trump does. You see where I'm coming from? You see where I'm coming from. There's inconsistencies. I don't know who you truly are, Vivek. You're just playing the politics game. But that's not all. Let's kind of wrap it up with some of the final things that they talked about, as they talked about some of the things that Vivek would get rid of as president. And he said he would get rid of certain bureaucracies. He said he would get rid of the IRS, the FBI, the Department of Education. He said the way he would deal with the IRS, he would downsize, move it to the U.S. Treasury, so it's a revenue collection process. I don't think downsizing an IRS when it comes to the nuances of the tax system is going to help deal with all the tax situations. I don't know if that necessarily makes sense for making the IRS a more efficient process when taxes are the most important way for us to fund public buildings, public programs, and all this different stuff. So I don't know why it doesn't make sense. He also talked about the FBI. He said they have 35,000 employees. 20,000 are back office functions, and he said they can go home and find honest work in the private sector when he gets rid of the FBI. What does that mean? Like, what do you mean just get a job in the private sector? He just assumes that 20,000 people will just go like, oh yeah, this is a private company that can use my services. Now, I'm not saying office workers can't find a job pretty easily, but let's not pretend it's going to be a just natural thing to find a job in the private sector, especially. Come on. And he said 15,000 agents in the front line should be moved to agencies like the U.S. Marshals, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, U.S. Treasury, DEA, so they become more specialized and a more efficient. I think that's a interesting kind of way to go about it, to make things a little bit more efficient by spreading out these agents to make them more specialized. The problem with this is if you want to tear down all bureaucracies, then how does this make sense? If you want all bureaucracies to disappear, then where are you sending these agents? I don't know, Vivek. I don't know where you're sending these agents if you want all bureaucracies to disappear. Because he actually says bureaucracies are basically a lead up to corruption. He thinks all bureaucracies are bad. He calls them the fourth branch, even though the executive branch is very much in charge of a lot of those situations. They appoint the leaders. One of the things that he says when the Young Turks brought up the fact that the executive branch appoints the leaders and really sets the standard for these bureaucracies is that, well, what about the 99% he doesn't do that? If you appoint the boss, that means you trust the boss to run the business. And he made a claim that, oh, because of certain policies, you can't fire anybody. That is some of the dumbest things I've ever heard. You work in business. I am guaranteed that Vivek hires certain managers who hires other staff. That's just how business works. That's how a chain of command works. Vivek is just being disingenuous just to be disingenuous. I know what you guys, a lot of you guys don't like bureaucracies. Mostly because you guys don't know how bureaucracies work. In general, bureaucracies have a very specific function to be very specialized in different sections of how to run the country. They are made to make the country more efficient in terms of running it. There's no innate corruption behind them. If you want to make the bureaucracy system more efficient, I'm all ears, but getting rid of them doesn't make any sense. He also talks about the Department of Education. Now, I have a lot of criticisms in terms of public education, and he brings up a lot of different things in terms of, how they were doing potentially corrupting things in terms of changing 4-year schools to 1 to 2, or changing from 1 to 2 year schools to 4 years, and how, they get $80 billion in terms of funding. Whatever, right? Whatever. Those are not inherently bad things. I'm not even going to discuss that right now. One thing that I do want to bring up regarding the Department of Education conversation is they bring up a great question. I'm going to bring up that question, but it regards school choice vouchers and private schools. Vivek wants to give all these money back to the people, and I see the reason why. But the problem here is there's an expectation that a lot of these kids can just go to private schools, can just go to charter schools. Matter of fact, I think it was Anna or Zhank, they asked them a question is, if you want all students to pass a civics test to vote, but all of them go to private school, how are you going to enforce a curriculum to ensure that they have the proper knowledge to pass these civics tests? You know what Vivek's answer is? Nothing. He doesn't answer the question. A lot of the times, Vivek just doesn't answer questions that have glaring flaws in terms of his logic. What he does bring up is that, teacher unions are bad, and he brings up the fact that, certain schools who have less funding actually have better standardized test scores. That doesn't answer the question that you were asked. What you're doing is saying, well, what we currently have in terms of public education is not working with these highly funded schools with teacher unions. These students are still not performing well. Even though I disagree with a lot of his teacher union points, that doesn't answer the question, even if that is your answer. And the last thing that he brings up is regarding secularism. He thinks that people should be allowed to freely express their religion without government interference. And he says that that's a problem in our, that's in the First Amendment. Like, what are you talking about? Vivek brought this point up and it made no sense. I'm not going to lie. It made no sense. So I try to give Vivek the benefit of the doubt because some of the ideas I like the election day being a holiday, I very much like. I think there's certain criticism of public education that is very valuable. I wouldn't get rid of the entirety of the Department of Education. I think the fact that he brought up the fact that they're obsessed with Trump is very valid, but at the same time, you never criticize Trump. It seems like you're a Trump fan and he's your rival. So I don't even know why you're defending Trump in the first place. With that said, with some of the few things that I agree with Vivek, the point still stands. Vivek's hypocrisy, Vivek's lies is still very glaring every time I watch him. Yes, you guys are Vivek fans. I understand that. I try to give him the benefit of the doubt. I wrote all this stuff down, but still none of the stuff he says makes any sense. It just doesn't. Yes, he's a smart guy. Yes, his heart might be in the right place. I'm not even say it's automatic. I don't think he's intentionally evil, nor do I think a lot of people are intentionally evil. I don't even think Vivek is evil. So if some Dems say he's evil, I don't even agree to that. I think Vivek has a lot of ideas, but these ideas are a little bit ignorant in terms of how they would be actually applied to our current system. I think they're hopeful and idealistic. For me, I don't think Vivek would be a good president as of right now, based off his current kind of viewpoint. I think Vivek should run for state senator or governor or mayor. I think he should start at the local level, move his way up. I don't know why he ended up at the presidency so quick, especially since he has no political experience. I think once Vivek actually enters the political system, start getting some local experience, he's going to understand some of the things he's saying is actually ridiculous. And certain criticisms is fair in terms of a lot of politicians. I'm not even against some of the potential corruption in regards to super PACs and lobbying. There's certain things that I'm going to bring this out because he had some ideas regarding it. I'm just make sure I say this because he did say that, and I think some people are going to like that he said this, of course. But he said things like how he would have a 10-year ban of lobbying if you leave the government. He would ban trading individual stocks as a member of Congress. I'm not even necessarily against some of these things. My issue is that you think the entire system is flawed and that you can just create a better system off the snap of your fingers based off these idealistic notions. It's ignorant. It's not going to solve issues. It's probably going to make things much worse and much more inefficient and make the country a lot more privatized. So you're leading into a way of being that's probably going to be worse for the public as a whole. That's just my opinion, of course. Let me know what you guys think. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Check out the podcast, www.purplepoliticalbreakdown.com. Y'all have a good one. Take care and peace.